All right, let's jump right in. We're going to pull back the curtain on a really critical piece of modern cybersecurity: threat intelligence. See, it's not just about building bigger digital walls anymore. Today, it's all about knowing what's coming before it even shows up at your door.
And you know, that really is the heart of the matter, isn't it? Because let's be honest, pretty much every organization out there knows they're a potential target. But the real game changer? It's moving from that vague, anxious feeling of danger to having a sharp, detailed picture of the threat. That's how you go from being reactive to being proactive. But to really get our heads around this, we have to get our terms straight first. The words threat and intelligence get thrown around all the time, but in the world of cybersecurity, they mean very, very specific things. And understanding that difference is the first step from chaos to clarity.
Okay, so here's the key distinction. A cyber threat is just the possibility of something bad happening. Think of it like a dark storm cloud on the horizon. You see it, you know it's there, but that's about it. Now, cyber threat intelligence, that's the full-blown meteorologist report. It's going to tell you the wind speed, the path of the storm, exactly when it's going to hit, and what you need to do to prepare. It takes a vague what if and turns it into a predictable event you can actually do something about.
And this image just nails that raw threat idea, doesn't it? You've got an active adversary, a hacker, who's out there methodically poking and prodding at your defenses, looking for any little crack to get in. This is exactly that what-if scenario that keeps security teams up at night. The potential is always there.
But intelligence, that's what you do about that potential. It's a whole process. You're out there collecting data, you're processing it, and then you're analyzing it to really understand who the attackers are, what they want, and how they operate. So it's not enough to just know a threat exists. It's about understanding it so deeply that you can build a defense tailored to stop that specific storm, not just any old bad weather.
Let's break this down even more. We're going to deconstruct the building blocks of a cyber attack. Because to really get how intelligence works, you have to see all the individual pieces that have to come together for an attacker to be successful. What's so fascinating here is how these four things lock together perfectly. First, you've got the threat. That's the who and the why. You know, the hacker who wants your data. Then there's the vulnerability. That's the opening, the weak spot, like some out-of-date software you forgot to patch. The exploit? That's the special key someone built to fit that specific opening perfectly. And finally, you've got risk, which is just the cold, hard probability that the hacker will actually use that key on that opening and succeed. Good threat intelligence helps you spot and break every single link in that chain. And here's the thing about those vulnerabilities, those openings. They aren't always some complex bug in the code. I mean, sure, sometimes they are, but a lot of the time, a vulnerability can be a totally normal feature, like a macro in a spreadsheet, that's just being used in a malicious way. And honestly, the biggest vulnerability of all is often us, a person clicking a suspicious link or using a weak password. Attackers know this, and you better believe they're always looking for the easiest way in.
So where does all this intelligence actually come from? Well, it's not magic. And it's definitely not some one-and-done report that just sits on a shelf gathering dust. It's a constant, disciplined process called the intelligence lifecycle.
Think of this as a continuous loop that never stops. It all starts with planning, just figuring out what questions you need to answer, like who's targeting our industry right now. Then comes collection, where you grab all that raw data. After that, you process it, basically cleaning it up and getting it into a format you can actually use. Step 4 is analysis. This is where the magic happens, where you find the patterns, the signal, and all that noise. Then you disseminate it, getting the right info to the right people. And finally, there's feedback, which is maybe the most important step. You ask, did that help? What should we look for next? And boom, the whole cycle starts over, getting smarter every single time. Which of course brings us to a huge question. If you're constantly collecting data for this cycle, where on earth are you even looking? Where do the pros find the clues about the next big attack?
The short answer is all over the place. Seriously. Some sources are super technical, like digging through system logs for what we call indicators of compromise. Think of them as digital fingerprints left behind by an attacker. But other sources are totally different. You've got analysts sifting through hacker forums on the dark web, monitoring social media chatter, and even just keeping an eye on global politics to see what might be coming down the pike. The clues really are everywhere.
And here's something that might actually surprise you. A massive amount of this crucial data isn't locked away in some secret database. It's what's known as OSINT, open source intelligence. It's information that's just out there, publicly available, hiding in plain sight on the internet, in news articles, you name it. It's just waiting for someone to connect the dots. And at the end of the day, that's the real art of cyber threat intelligence. It's not about finding one single magic bullet. It's about being a kind of digital detective, piecing together a little clue from a forum post over here, a technical log from over there, and a news report from somewhere else, until you've built a complete picture, a mosaic of the threat before it even hits.
So let's bring this all home. Having strong firewalls and antivirus, that's like having high walls and a strong gate around your castle. They are absolutely essential. But threat intelligence? That's like having spies on the inside of the enemy camp telling you exactly where they're planning to attack, what tools they're going to use, and when they're coming. In this digital battle we're all in, knowing your enemy isn't just an advantage. It might just be the most powerful weapon you have.
You know, every single day, we're all leaving this trail of digital breadcrumbs all over the internet. Most of it is just public. It's out there in the open for anyone to find. But in the right hands, or maybe more importantly, the wrong ones, all that scattered data can be pieced together to build a picture of someone that's, well, it's startlingly complete. That right there is the world of open source intelligence. And yeah, we're about to dive deep. I mean, that sentence right there, it just perfectly captures the devastating power of a digital investigation when it goes horribly wrong. It's a really chilling reminder that when an online mob decides they've found their target, the consequences are very, very real. So to really get what's at stake here, we've got to look at a case from May 2020. It is a perfect and a really cautionary tale of just how fast a digital witch hunt can spiral completely out of control. Okay, so it all kicks off with this viral video. A woman in Singapore gets arrested for not wearing a mask. And of course, the internet does what it does best. It becomes judge, jury, and executioner, all at once. Within just a few hours, these amateur detectives, using publicly available data, identify the woman as the CEO of a digital security firm. And just like that, her name, her photos, even details about her employees are plastered everywhere online. There's just one tiny, massive problem. They had the wrong woman. The real-world fallout was immediate and brutal, a flood of threats, racist abuse, and a huge hit to her company's business. And that really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? How could a bunch of people, just using what seem like basic online tools, be so incredibly sure of themselves and yet get something so catastrophically wrong? The answer is in the powerful technique they were using, whether they actually knew its proper name or not. Well, the secret is this technique, used by pretty much everyone, from journalists and cybersecurity pros to actual intelligence agencies. It's called OSINT. So, OSINT, that's open source intelligence. And it's not what you see in the movies, hacking into some secret government server. It's the art and the science of finding, sorting through, and then analyzing information from public sources to build actual usable intelligence. The key thing to remember here is that it's all just out there, public. And believe me, when we say public sources, we're talking about a huge range of stuff. Just think about your own digital life for a second. Your social media posts, right? The GPS data that's secretly tagged to your photos. Public records like who owns what property, company reports from where you work, even just a casual comment you left on some online forum years ago. It's the digital exhaust of our entire society. Okay, so you probably think you're pretty handy with Google, right? We all do. But what if I told you that what most of us do is barely scratching the surface? What if I told you there are hidden commands that can turn a simple search engine into a shockingly powerful investigative tool? These things are known in the biz as Google dorks or Google hacking. And honestly, they're like secret cheat codes for the internet. They let you filter search results with this incredible precision to find things that aren't really meant to be found easily. Things like specific file types or text on one particular website, or even sensitive documents that were never supposed to be public. Okay, look at this example. This is where it gets really cool. This isn't just typing words into a box. This is giving Google a set of specific instructions. You're telling it, hey Google, I only want you to look at the website publicintelligence.net. And on that site, only show me results that are PDF files. And inside those specific PDFs, I only want to see the ones that contain this exact phrase, sensitive but unclassified. See how powerful that is? And that right there, that just perfectly highlights the whole issue, doesn't it? There are hundreds of these kinds of advanced tools and techniques. In the hands of a cybersecurity professional, they're essential. They use them to gather intelligence to stop real attacks. But in the hands of a threat actor, or even just a well-meaning amateur who doesn't know what they're doing, they can be unbelievably dangerous. Which brings us right to the heart of the matter with OSINT. It's this incredibly powerful tool, but it's a classic double-edged sword. It can be used for protection, or it can be used for persecution. So, on the one hand, for the good guys, OSINT is absolutely critical. Security teams use it to understand how an attacker thinks and works, all to prevent real harm. But on the flip side, because it's so easy to use, it can be misused, big time. It can fuel that mob mentality where unverified bits of information get weaponized, leading to the exact kind of disaster we saw in that Singapore case. And that's really the bottom line, isn't it? If the data is wrong, if the intelligence is bad, the fallout can be massive. Professionals waste valuable time chasing ghosts, and even worse, innocent people can have their lives completely wrecked based on nothing more than a digital case of mistaken identity. You see, in this world, in the world of threat intelligence, getting it right isn't just important, it's everything. A mistake isn't just a mistake, it's a vulnerability. And there are two major types of screw-ups that professionals are always trying to avoid. All right, first up, we have what's called a false positive. This is when all your intelligence points to a threat that doesn't actually exist. Basically, it's a ghost. You think you see a threat, but there's nothing actually there. Now, the problem with a false positive is that it's a huge waste of energy. It sends your security team on a total wild goose chase, burning through time and resources that should be spent on the actual real dangers that are hiding just out of view. But then you have this second type, which is honestly way scarier. It's the false negative. This is the one that gets you. It's the silent killer. It's when your intelligence tells you everything's fine, all clear, but in reality, the attacker is already inside. Think of it like this. It's a smoke detector with no batteries. You think you're safe, but you're not. It gives you this dangerous sense of security, all while the real threat is growing, unnoticed. It can lead to a truly catastrophic breach, where a company only figures out they've been hit long after all the damage has been done. So here's the takeaway. Whether it's an online mob pointing fingers or a pro-security team missing that one crucial piece of data, the stakes are just unbelievably high. We're talking about ruined lives and vulnerable companies. And that kind of brings it all back home, doesn't it? All of this information, all this OSINT, we're the ones generating it every single day. And the tools to find it and piece it all together are more powerful than ever. So I want you to ask yourself this. If someone were to investigate you using only the stuff that's publicly available, what would they find? Your life, your digital life, it's basically an open book. If someone started reading it, what story would it tell them?
You know, in our digital world, there are these invisible battlefields all around us. I mean, every single click, every login, every message you send, it's a potential front line. So how do the pros, the people whose job it is to protect all our data, actually defend against threats they can't even see? Well, it's not magic, that's for sure. It's a plan. It's a playbook. And today, we're going to walk through exactly how they build it. Okay, just imagine this for a second. You've done it. Your new app is a total hit. Millions of people are on it, sharing their lives, their photos, their private messages. But that success, it puts a huge target on your back. So where do you even begin to protect all of that data from the countless threats out there?
To figure that out, we're going to dive into a case study. We'll look at a fictional company called Talkative. By seeing the specific challenges they're up against, we can really understand how cybersecurity pros turn this chaotic mess of potential dangers into a concrete, actionable plan.
So here's the deal with Talkative. It's a social platform for a younger crowd, which right away tells you it's holding a ton of sensitive data, photos, private chats, you name it. And it's all on a cloud server with a team of 50 people who sometimes work from home. Now, this whole setup creates a massive and frankly complex surface for a potential attack. Okay, this right here, this points to one of the biggest vulnerabilities of all, people. Talkative sent an email about security. That was it. No mandatory training, no follow-up. In cybersecurity, an unchecked assumption like, oh, I'm sure everyone read it, well, that's basically an open invitation for an attacker. It's a perfect example of the human factor, often the weakest link in any security chain, no matter how fancy the tech is.
All right, so with a situation like Talkative's, how do the pros even start to get a handle on the risk? They don't just guess. They begin by actually measuring the danger. And this is where a really key concept comes in, determining the current threat status. Let's break this down. A threat status is basically a weather forecast for cyber attacks. Yeah, seriously. It's an assessment of the digital climate. You know, how likely is an attack right now and how much damage could it actually do? It gives security teams a clear, simple way to talk about the level of danger.
The easiest way to think about it is like a traffic light. So status green means things are pretty calm. There are no known immediate threats targeting the organization. It's a business as usual kind of day. But of course, the security teams are always watching.
Now, status yellow, or medium threat, means the forecast is getting a little cloudy. The team has spotted some increased malicious activity, or maybe they've got intelligence that suggests an attack is more likely. This is a state of heightened alert. Everyone needs to be a little more careful.
And then you've got status red. This means a storm is either happening right now or it's just over the horizon. An attack is active or the intel says it's imminent. At this level, it is all hands on deck. It requires immediate, decisive action to defend everything.
Okay, so a color-coded system is great and all, but how do they actually come up with that forecast? How do they decide if it's a calm green day or a frantic red alert?
They do it through a systematic and really structured process called threat modeling. This isn't about staring into a crystal ball, not at all. It's a rigorous method for finding threats, understanding your weak spots, and prioritizing your defenses. It is the professional's playbook. And that is exactly what we're going to break down now. We're going inside the playbook to see the exact steps a security team would take to build a threat model for a company just like our friend Talkative.
The whole process generally boils down to these 5 core steps. Think of it like a roadmap. First, you gather intel. Then, you figure out what you actually need to protect. After that, you assess your current defenses, you calculate the real risks, and finally, you map out how an attack might actually go down. Let's dig into each one. Step 1 is all about doing your homework. The security team for Talkative would be digging into questions like, what kind of attackers target social media apps? What are the newest ways they're getting into cloud servers? They'd be looking through government reports, industry threat feeds, all that stuff, to understand the specific dangers they face, not just generic ones. Step 2. What are we actually protecting here? This might seem obvious, but it's such a critical step. For Talkative, the crown jewels are pretty clear. It's not the office chairs, it's the millions of user data points, the private messages people trust them with, and of course, the company's own secret sauce, their source code. You have to know what's most valuable because you can't protect everything equally. Step 3 is about taking a good, hard, honest look in the mirror. What defenses do we actually have? This means the tech you can buy, firewalls, anti-malware, that kind of thing. But just as important, it includes your people and your processes. And for Talkative, this is where that optional training email becomes a huge red flag. A weakness in a procedure is just as dangerous as a hole in a firewall. Now we get to the math in step 4. The team takes everything they learned about potential attacks and weighs it against their defenses. This is where they answer the big questions like, okay, we know a phishing attack is super likely, so how well is our optional email training going to hold up? This whole process helps them focus their energy and money on the biggest, most likely risks they actually face. And a final analysis step is threat mapping. This is where the team really starts to think like an attacker. They literally draw a map of a potential breach. For example, an employee gets a phishing email, they click the link, malware gets on their laptop, and from there, the attacker uses their login to get to the company network and finally the cloud server. This helps them see the entire attack chain and find every single weak link.
But look, all of this analysis, the intel, the risk assessment, is totally useless if it doesn't lead to action. So let's look at how this plan turns into actual real-world protection.
This quote really sums it up perfectly. The entire point of this whole process is to produce clear, actionable recommendations. It's about telling the people in charge not just what the problems are, but exactly what to do about them. And for a company like Talkative, the recommendations would be super direct and specific. They'd need better tools for sure. They'd need strict new rules for anyone working remotely. They should be actively testing their own systems for holes. And, most importantly, that optional email has got to go. It needs to be replaced with mandatory, regular security training for every single person. No exceptions.
So, we've seen how a company like Talkative can use this process to build a defense. But this isn't just for big tech companies. The logic behind it is something we can all use.
Here's the bottom line. Threat modeling is really just a framework for thinking. It's about systematically looking at what you value, what the real dangers are, and how you can realistically protect yourself. It's a way to turn the overwhelming chaos of online threats into a strategy you can actually manage. Most common and maybe the most frustrating vulnerability of all, weak passwords and no multi-factor authentication. MFA. That's the little code you get on your phone when you log in somewhere new. Without it, a stolen password is a golden ticket for an attacker. It's basically like putting $1 billion in a vault and locking it with a padlock that has the combination 1234. Okay, so we've laid out the problems, and yeah, they're pretty serious, but here's the good news. Every single one of them is fixable. The whole point of this analysis is to create a clear, step-by-step action plan to get the company secure.
So, the solution isn't just one thing. It's a defense with multiple layers. It all starts with the people, making security training mandatory so everyone knows how to spot a phishing email. Then you lock down access with MFA and a least privilege policy, which just means people only get access to the data they absolutely need for their job. Then you fix the tech, you harden the cloud servers, you make sure every laptop is secure, and finally, you create an incident response plan, which is basically a fire drill playbook for what to do the moment an attack happens.
And listen, out of all those recommendations, MFA is the one I really want to zero in on. If you take away just one thing from this, it should be how important this is. Forcing people to use that second code from their phone is probably the single most effective way to stop attackers who are using stolen passwords. It's a massive security upgrade for a really small amount of effort. It's a total game changer.
You can really see the transformation here. It's a total night and day difference. The company goes from being the super high-risk, easy target to being resilient. Untrained staff become your first line of defense, a human firewall. Unlocked accounts are now buttoned up with MFA. An unmonitored cloud becomes a hardened fortress that's being watched 24/7. Talkative can actually flip the script from being a soft target to a secure platform. We've walked through this whole story about a fake company. But why is it so important? I mean, why should you, personally, care about any of this? What's the real lesson here?
Because Talkative might be fictional, but its problems are 100% real. These exact same vulnerabilities, weak passwords, no training, sloppy cloud settings, they exist in so many companies, big and small, that we all use every single day. I mean, we saw this in the real world in 2024 with the massive Snowflake breach. Attackers used stolen logins to hit over 165 different organizations. It just proves that getting the basics right is everything.
And the stakes get so much higher when you remember who's getting hurt if things go wrong. When the data belongs to young people, to kids and teenagers, security stops being just a tech problem. It becomes a fundamental, ethical responsibility. For companies like Talkative, protecting their users isn't an option. It has to be at the very core of what they do, not just some item on a checklist.
And so that really leaves us with one final, crucial question to think about. The next time you download a new app or sign up for a new service, just ask yourself, do you really know how they're handling your data? Is it being protected by a company that truly takes this stuff seriously? Or is it being handled like the before version of Talkative, just one click away from a complete disaster? It's definitely something worth thinking about.
Every single day, there's this invisible war being fought. It's not for territory, not in the way we usually think about it, but it's for something way more valuable these days, our data. And the front lines, they're literally everywhere. So let's dive into this unseen battle. Look, we all get the basics, right? Firewalls, antivirus software, they're kind of like the castle walls for our digital lives. But let's be real. The attackers are always finding new ways to get over, under, or straight through those walls. So the question is, how do we go beyond just building higher walls? How do we actually fight back? Well, welcome to the modern battlefield. It's not a place you can find on a map. It's digital, and the dangers here are constant, they're personal, and they are changing all the time. Let's take a look at a couple of the most common weapons you'll find out there. First up is phishing. We've all gotten them. Those sketchy emails or texts that just feel off. The one that looks like it's from your bank, telling you to urgently verify your account by clicking a link. That's a classic phishing attempt. But fighting it with intelligence is way cooler than just hitting delete. Get this. Security teams actually monitor public records of domain name owners. They're looking for newly registered websites that are just a little too similar to big companies. Why? Because an email from PayPal with a capital I instead of an L, that's a huge red flag for an upcoming phishing scam. And if they know about it ahead of time, they can block it before it ever even gets to you. And then you've got the really high-stakes stuff, ransomware. This is basically digital kidnapping. Attackers get into a system, encrypt all the important files, and grind an entire organization to a halt. Then they demand a huge ransom to give it all back. And the intelligence on this stuff? A lot of it comes from analysts lurking on the dark web, seeing what new ransomware kits are being sold to wannabe criminals. There's even a newer tactic where instead of locking your files, they steal them, post a small sample on a public leak site as proof, and threaten to dump everything unless they get paid. It's intense, but by scanning these sites, the good guys can get a heads up that a company's been hit.
You ever click on your favorite website and nothing happens? You might think it's just a glitch, right? But sometimes it's way more sinister. It could be a deliberate attack designed to bring a business, maybe even your business, to a dead stop. So today, we're going to break down one of the internet's most disruptive weapons, the denial of service attack.
Let's just make this real for a second. Imagine you're running a booming online store. Everything's going great. And then, bam. Overnight, your site just dies. It's not slow, it's not buggy, it's completely offline for your actual paying customers. So what just happened? Well, you might have just walked right into a denial of service attack.
All right, so to defend against something, you've got to understand it first. So what exactly is this digital siege we're talking about? Let's dive in.
Okay, at its heart, a denial of service, or DOS attack, is really just a massive, on-purpose traffic jam for the internet. The goal? Oh, it's brutally simple. Just flood a website or a network with so much junk traffic that the real users, the people who actually need to be there, can't get through. The whole system either slows to a crawl or just gives up completely, denying service to everyone.
Now, you've probably heard the term DOS, right? That extra D is absolutely crucial. It stands for distributed. See, a regular DOS attack comes from just one computer. Think of it like one person prank calling your store over and over. Annoying, for sure, but you can just block that one number. A DDoS attack, though, that's coming from thousands, maybe even millions of computers all at once. It's like the entire city is calling your phone at the exact same time. Now that is way, way harder to stop.
So the big question is, how on earth does one attacker get thousands of computers to do their dirty work? They're not exactly going door to door asking for help. No, they build a remote-controlled digital army. Let's take a look at how these attacks are built from the ground up.
It almost always kicks off with a bit of deception. Attackers use this nasty software called malware to secretly hijack normal, everyday computers. And a super common tool for this is a Trojan. You know, just like the mythical Trojan horse. It looks like something you want, maybe a software update or a free game, but it's hiding something really malicious on the inside.
The whole thing plays out in 4 key steps. First up is infection. The malware spreads, infecting tons of computers and turning them into these little remote-controlled bots or zombies. Then comes creation. All of these infected computers get linked together into a massive network called a botnet. Third, you've got the command. The attacker, who's called a bot master, sends out a single order. And finally, the flood. Every single bot in that network bombards the target at the same time, causing that digital siege we've been talking about.
So we get how it's done. But why? I mean, why would anyone go to all this trouble? Let's get into the motives behind all this mayhem.
And you might be surprised, it's not always about a quick payday. Sometimes the goal is purely political, a type of online protest they call hacktivism. Other times, it's just ruthless business, sabotaging a competitor right before a big launch. And here's a clever one. Sometimes the whole DDoS attack is just a giant smokescreen, a huge, noisy distraction so the attacker can sneak in the back and steal your data without you even noticing.
So who's really in the crosshairs here? Honestly, any organization with a public online presence is a potential target. We're talking online retailers like our shoe store example, government websites, banks, you name it. The bottom line is pretty simple. If you're online and people count on you, well, you're on the battlefield.
Okay, I know that all sounds pretty bleak. It's a huge, messy problem. But here's the good news. There are ways to fight back. And your first line of defense isn't some fancy software. It's intelligence. Knowing your enemy, that's your shield.
See, effective threat intelligence means being proactive, not reactive. It's about knowing who might have a reason to come after you, maybe a disgruntled former employee or a super aggressive competitor. It means keeping up with the latest attack methods people are talking about online. And yeah, it even means keeping an eye on those forums and messaging sites where hacktivist groups might be whispering about their next target. It's all about seeing the storm on the horizon before it makes landfall.
So once you have that intel, you can actually turn it into a real plan. This is where the rubber meets the road, where we go from just knowing things to actually doing things.
You can start putting up your defenses right away. Things like filtering your traffic to block suspicious visitors or putting IP restrictions on your most critical services. You can even tweak your web server to handle more people at once and set up simple rules like limiting how many times one person can try to connect. Trust me, these small steps can make a world of difference when an attack starts.
Now, for bigger companies, or really just anyone who wants to call in the experts, there are these amazing specialized services. The best way to think about a DDoS scrubbing center is like a giant high-tech bouncer for your website. All of your traffic goes to them first, they scrub out all the bad guys and only let your legitimate customers through. It's literally like hiring an elite security team for your digital front door.
And you know, that's really what this all boils down to. In our world today, your digital front door is always unlocked, always open. So the question isn't if a crowd is going to show up, it's whether you'll be ready for them when they do.
So here's the bottom line. Just sitting back, waiting for an attack, and then reacting, it's not enough anymore. The enemy is just too fast, too creative. To really stand a chance, you have to think like them. You've got to anticipate their next move. And that's where this whole idea of fighting with foreknowledge comes in. This is cyber threat intelligence, or CTI. It's all about understanding your enemy, what they want, what tools they use, how they operate, before they even make a move. It's about flipping the script and going on the offensive. So what is cyber threat intelligence really? Well, it's a formal process. It's about grabbing all this raw data about threats from all over the place, turning it into something we can actually use, and then analyzing it to figure out how to stop attacks. But here's the thing. It's not a one-size-fits-all deal. A huge drug company trying to protect its secret formulas needs very different intelligence than, say, a small online shop that's more worried about a simple phishing attack taking down their website. And what's really cool is how this intelligence gets tailored for exactly who needs it. You've got 3 main levels. At the very top, you have strategic intelligence. This is the big picture stuff for the boardroom, for the CEOs, helping them make long-term security decisions. Then there's tactical intelligence. This is for the IT and security managers. It tells them about the specific techniques and tactics attackers are using right now. And then you have operational intelligence. This is for the analysts on the front lines, giving them the nitty-gritty details of specific attacks that might be coming their way. You know, the bad guys never take a day off. They're always coming up with new tricks. And because of that, the work of cyber threat intelligence can't stop either. It's not a report you read once. It's a continuous, never-ending cycle of learning and getting better. And this is the engine that makes it all work. It's a constant loop. It all starts with planning and direction. I mean, you gotta know what you're looking for, right? Then comes collection, where you just hoover up raw data from everywhere. But that data is a mess, so it has to be processed into something analysts can actually work with. That leads to analysis, which is where the real magic happens, connecting the dots and finding the threats. Once you find something, you disseminate it, you get it to the right people. And finally, and this is so important, you get feedback. What worked? What didn't? That feedback goes right back into the planning phase, making the whole cycle smarter the next time around. Okay, so where does all this intel actually come from? This is where it starts to feel a little bit like a spy movie. It's less about algorithms and more about good old-fashioned intelligence work, just, for the digital world. Let's pull back the curtain. A massive chunk of it comes from something called open source intelligence, or OSINT for short. And all that means is that it's information collected from publicly available sources. You would be shocked, seriously shocked, at how much critical intel is just sitting out there in the open for anyone to find. And when I say public sources, I mean everything. We're talking about simple Google searches, news reports, social media posts, public government records, even stuff from the deep and dark web can be considered open source. Every little piece can be a clue in a much, much bigger puzzle. So analysts take all these little bits and pieces of information from all over the world, and they start to stitch them together. And by doing that, they can build this incredibly detailed picture of who the attackers are, what they're up to, and who they might be going after next. It's all about connecting the dots on a global scale. And here's a wild example of how powerful this can be. There's a technique called Google dorking. It's basically using advanced search commands on Google to find things that aren't supposed to be public, like sensitive company documents or hidden login pages that were accidentally left exposed. Both the good guys and the bad guys use this stuff all the time. But it's not all out in the open, of course. A big part of this job is diving into the shadier parts of the internet. Analysts monitor marketplaces on the dark web to see what new hacking tools are for sale. They hang out in secret member-only hacking forums on the deep web to get the inside scoop on new malware. And they scan paste sites, simple text-sharing sites, where hackers often dump stolen data or brag about who they're going to attack next. It's a dark world, but it's filled with clues. All right, we've been talking a lot about tech and data and all this cool spy stuff, but the single most important and most vulnerable piece of the puzzle, it isn't software. It's people. It's us. And look, this is the hard truth of the matter. You can have the fanciest, most expensive security system in the world, but all of it can be completely worthless because of one person making one tiny mistake. And that's exactly why hackers so often target people instead of computers. I mean, just think about passwords. We all know we're supposed to have long, complicated, unique passwords for everything. But how many of us actually do? Using password 123 or your pet's name for everything is like putting a welcome mat out for hackers. It's still one of the absolute biggest risks out there for both people and companies. And this whole strategy of attacking the person instead of the program, it has a name: social engineering. This isn't about writing code, it's about hacking people. It's the art of psychological manipulation, using things like trust or fear or just our desire to be helpful to trick someone into giving away the keys to the kingdom. And that right there is why it's so incredibly common. I mean, why would a hacker spend weeks trying to break through a complex firewall when they can just call an employee, pretend to be from the IT help desk, and have them just tell them their password in 5 minutes? It's always about the path of least resistance. So all of this leaves us with one last really big question to think about. We always hear that people are the weakest link in the security chain, but what if that's the wrong way to look at it? What if with the right knowledge and the right training, that person, that human, could actually be our greatest asset? Maybe not the weakest link, but the true first line of defense. How do you really know if a company is telling the truth? I mean, in today's world, it's easier than ever for businesses to make some pretty bold claims. But the flip side is, it's also easier for us to check up on them. Okay, so let's dive into this with a really fascinating case study that shows us how to separate fact from fiction. So, let's meet a company called Mugshot. They make these trendy, insulated coffee mugs. And to get investors excited, they're making a huge claim that they produce and sell 10,000 of these mugs every single week. Now, that is a massive number, and it for sure gets people's attention. And it definitely got the attention of a potential investor. This person is interested for sure, but they're also smart and a little skeptical. Before they're going to put any money on the table, they want to know if that 10,000 mugs a week number is legit. So they do what any savvy investor would do. They hire an analyst to check it out. All right, so the investigation kicks off. The analyst's job is to dig into Mugshot's claims using only information that's publicly available. We're not talking about corporate espionage here. This is all about being a clever detective in the digital age. And the main tool for this job is something called OSINT, which stands for Open Source Intelligence. Now, this isn't some spy movie stuff, hacking into secret files. OSINT is simply the art of finding and making sense of information that's already out there for anyone to see. You just have to know where to look and how to connect the dots. So where does our analyst start? Where so many companies tell their story these days: social media. This is a special kind of OSINT called SOCMINT. Mugshot's Facebook page is the first stop. It's a place where they've posted pictures and updates to build their brand, but in trying to look good, they might have revealed a little more than they meant to. And you know what? It doesn't take long for the analysts to find what looks like a smoking gun. The first pieces of evidence seem to completely blow Mugshot's big claim out of the water. And the best part? It all comes from the company's own marketing. So here's the core problem the analyst found. On one side, you have the company's claim, a whopping 10,000 mugs a week. But on the other side, the evidence suggests they can only make about 1,000. That is a staggering 9,000 mug gap. So where on earth did that 1,000 number come from? Well, the evidence was a 1-2 punch. First, the SOCMINT from their own social media. Photos on Mugshot's Facebook page meant to show off their factory clearly show just one mug-making machine, and that machine can produce, at most, about 1,000 mugs a week. Second, the OSINT from public records. Business filings actually confirm the company is only licensed to operate a single one of these machines. So at this point, it feels like an open and shut case, right? You've got visual proof from their own social media, And that proof is backed up by official records. Everything points to one conclusion. Mugshot is inflating its numbers by a factor of 10. The investor's skepticism seems totally justified. But wait a minute. A good analyst knows that what you find on the surface isn't always the whole story. Is this really enough to say definitively that Mugshot is lying? Or could there be something else going on? And this brings us to probably the most important distinction in any kind of investigation: the huge difference between intelligence and actual absolute proof. What the analyst has right now are red flags, some really important clues, but they are not a final verdict. So while this evidence raises some serious questions, it isn't the complete picture. These initial findings aren't the end of the investigation. They're really just the beginning. They don't give the analyst the final answer, but they do tell them exactly which tough questions they need to ask next. So what could possibly explain that 9,000 mug gap? Well, there are actually a bunch of plausible explanations the initial search might have missed. For example, what if Mugshot has other factories they just don't post about on Facebook? Or maybe they outsource a ton of their production to a partner. That happens all the time. They could also be running that one machine 24/7 with multiple shifts. Or maybe their sales figures include mugs from old inventory, not just what they made this week. See, the single photo isn't the whole story. This means a really complete investigation has to go way deeper. You start with OSINT to find those red flags, just like our analyst did. But then you've got to dig into official documents, production logs, shipping records, regulatory filings. You have to investigate potential partners or other facilities. It's only by combining all of these different pieces that you can get a truly reliable picture. And this is really the key lesson from our little case study. Open source intelligence is incredibly powerful. It's amazing for pointing you in the right direction and finding things that don't add up. But for a final, accurate conclusion, it has to be backed up by more concrete, verifiable business intelligence. So was Mugshot lying? The thing is, we still don't know for sure, and that's the whole point. The analyst's job wasn't to come back with a simple yes or no. It was to use public information to arm the investor with the critical questions they needed to ask Mugshot directly before making a huge decision. And this kind of leaves us with a fascinating thought. Every one of us and every single company leaves a digital trail of public data online. If an analyst were to look at your digital footprint, what story would it tell? And would that story be the complete truth? Today, we're looking at a case that honestly feels like it's been ripped straight from a modern detective show. It's all about a lavish lifestyle, a suspicious employer, and the massive, massive difference between a clue you find on social media and actual hard evidence. This is going to be a good one. Okay, just imagine this for a second. You're a business owner and your employee, who you know earns a pretty standard salary, suddenly starts rolling in with designer gear. We're talking 1,000-pound handbags, crazy expensive stuff. I mean, what's the first thing that pops into your head? It's a really tricky spot to be in, and it gets right to the heart of how we handle suspicion in our hyper-digital world. So, let's get into the details of our story. It all starts when one employee's spending habits become so obvious, so loud, that her company just can't ignore it anymore. So, meet Sally. She's a bookkeeper for a company called Mugshot, making about 40,000 pounds a year. She's single, seems like a totally normal employee. But then, things start to change. And the key word here is suddenly. It's like her entire lifestyle gets a massive upgrade, practically overnight. And let's put a number on this. We're not talking about a small shopping trip. She starts showing up to the office in designer shoes that cost 800 pounds a pair. For someone on her salary, that's a huge piece of a monthly paycheck, right? And it didn't just stop with the shoes. Nope. Soon it was 1,000-pound handbags, then a brand new sports car, and to top it all off, a luxury holiday in the Maldives. You know, this isn't just someone treating themselves. This is a complete lifestyle transformation. And if you're her employer, the red flags are practically waving in your face. So you can probably guess where the company's mind goes. Embezzlement. As the bookkeeper, Sally's in a position of trust with the company's finances. So they do the logical thing. They bring in an analyst to try and figure out what on earth is going on. And this brings us to the investigator's very first move. In this day and age, when you want to know about someone's life, where's the first place you look? Yeah, you know where this is going. The analyst's first port of call is Sally's social media profiles. And look, the goal here isn't necessarily to find dirt, it's actually the opposite. They're hoping to find a perfectly innocent explanation. A post like, OMG, I won the lottery, or maybe a tribute to a grandparent who left her an inheritance. On the surface, it seems like a pretty smart, harmless way to start digging. And what the analyst is doing here, it actually has a professional name. It's called Open Source Intelligence, or OSINT for short. It's a super powerful tool used by everyone from journalists to intelligence agencies. All it means is gathering info from public sources, social media, news articles, public records, anything that's out there for anyone to see. But here's the million-dollar question. Sure, checking her Facebook is a reasonable place to start, but is it where the investigation should end? Can what you see or what you don't see on someone's profile really give you the whole story? And right here, we get to the absolute heart of the problem. Because relying only on these digital breadcrumbs isn't just incomplete, it's a minefield. You're walking right into the classic OSINT trap, jumping to a conclusion way, way too vast. I mean, think about it. We all curate our lives online, right? It's a highlight reel. We post the amazing vacation photos, the big achievements, the perfect brunch. It's a performance. And you just can't base a serious real-world investigation on a performance. It's not the whole truth. So the analyst scrolls through Sally's profiles and finds nothing. No lottery post, no mention of a rich relative. So that means she must be guilty, right? No! Absolutely not. This is such a critical mistake to make. Just because she didn't post an explanation doesn't prove one doesn't exist. Maybe she's just a private person. And the problems here aren't just about getting the facts wrong. There are some serious legal risks, too. Just because a picture is public doesn't give a company a free pass to scrape it and use it in an internal investigation. There are data privacy laws, like GDPR, that have strict rules about this stuff. A wrong move here could land the company in a world of legal and financial trouble. Okay, so if a quick scan of social media is the wrong way to do it, then what does the right way look like? Let's walk through the steps of a professional investigation that goes way beyond just a screen. Now, this is what a real investigation looks like. It's methodical. You start with a financial records review, looking for actual proof, not just feelings. Then you analyze her access. What systems can she even get into? Is there any evidence she did something she wasn't supposed to? And then, and this is so important, you interview her. You have to give her a chance to explain herself. Maybe she has a successful side hustle or got a gift from family. From there, you can do a full audit and try to connect any real evidence you find. This whole case really boils down to one fundamental difference, and it's a distinction that is absolutely critical in any kind of investigation, whether it's for a company, a court case, or just in your own life. Let's break this down, because this is the key takeaway. On one side, you have what we'll call intelligence. That's the stuff from OSINT. It's a clue, a hint, a starting point. It gives you a reason to ask questions. But on the other side, you have evidence. That is verified factual proof you get from a proper investigation. Intelligence leads to suspicion. Only evidence gives you proof, and you never ever make a life-changing accusation based on suspicion alone. So, what's the bottom line here? OSINT is an amazing tool. It's fantastic for finding leads and pointing you in the right direction, but it can only ever be the first step. It has to be followed by real, methodical, ethical investigation to actually verify the facts. It's the starting pistol, not the finish line. And that really leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? We are all swimming in an ocean of public data every single day. And the real challenge for all of us is to have the discipline to separate what we see online from what we actually know to be true, and to make sure our judgments are always based on solid fact, not just digital perception.